Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode. Oh, what a stressful morning. I'm so sorry that this show is an hour late. It's not my fault. I don't know why I'm apologising. StreamYard has been down for quite a while. So apologies that this is not the usual 8 a.m. experience and that we're doing this a little bit later at 9. But still, I hope you're doing good and we're a lot better than I have through stress this morning, to be fair. But we're back up and running. Tomorrow, fingers crossed, if StreamYard's working, it will be the normal 8 a.m. time, I can assure you. So apologies for those of you that have either started work or at school or whatever, and you can't tune in live. But thank you to those of you that have still tuned in. Very much appreciate all of you doing so. And we've got quite a lot of stuff to go through. And of course, this has limited my time in the morning as well, quite significantly. So it might be a slightly shorter show than you're usually expecting. But good morning to everybody joining us in the chat box. We've probably got some new faces getting in there early today. Rocky, MFB, Akshat, good morning. Anthony, Noasa, Mo, Kevin, Christopher, Garth, Mike, MFB. Good morning, everybody. Hope you are doing good. Hope you are doing well. Let's crack on with today's stories, though. We start by telling you to go and check out our tactical breakdown we did yesterday on Raphinha, Brazilian international, Leeds United winger. We broke him down and gave you a lot of information about him with some expert insight from Joe Donoghue from the Yorkshire Evening Post and also from Connor from One Leeds fan channel. So make sure you check that out. We compared him to Serge Gnabry, Saka, Kulusevski, and he comes out really impressively. So worth a watch indeed. Our first story of the day, though, is confirming that Omar Rekik has indeed joined Sparta Rotterdam on loan for next season. They were willing to include a clause in the contract that is set to see the player basically play more games than he would have done if he'd have gone elsewhere. They were willing to kind of compromise on that. And I think Arsenal wanted to have a club that were always going to be willing to give him more game time, which is, really positive for the player. Harry Clarke has also joined Stoke City on loan in a very interesting deal indeed. He was obviously away with Hibs and prior to that Ross County, but he will now play in the Championship next season to try and further his own career as Arsenal look to maximise the potential value on a future sale for the young defender. Now, moving into potential big exits, Manchester City are holding an interest still in Kieran Tierney. In fact, he's on a list of players in alternatives to Marc Cucurella. I still think Marc Cucurella will, of course, end up at Manchester City, but Kieran Tierney, according to the Scotsman, is said to be on their list of players should a move for the Spaniard fall apart. Arsenal, of course, had an asking price of around £50 million, supposedly, when Real Madrid were interested. Maybe that would be a similar case if Manchester City came in. That said, it is a very similar price to Cucurella, so they would be able to pay it. And with the money that they're making off of Jesus, Sterling, and possibly Zinchenko deals, it would be an easy fee, I think, for them to achieve. But I don't think Kieran Tierney will go anywhere this window, to be honest. Now, Fabio Vieira is expected to be announced very, very soon as an Arsenal player, if he hasn't already been done so already, whenever we get around to doing this show. But today, I think there's a good chance that we may see that announcement. That's the understanding that yesterday it was kind of a case of 48 hours and then it should be announced. He's now away back on holiday after completing all of his media and medical and all of that stuff. So Fabio Vieira should be announced as an Arsenal player very, very soon indeed. I've got a piece about how that deal was kept secret coming out of football.london a little bit later on as well. Unfortunately, for those that are very desperate to see Tielemans join Arsenal this summer, it doesn't look as though that is going to be the case, at least not early on during the window. Tielemans and the interest of Arsenal has cooled at this stage. Arsenal are said to be focusing on other targets whilst Tielemans' situation festers. I don't know if this is kind of a bit more of a tactic from Arsenal to kind of force maybe Tielemans to kick up a bit of a fuss. I don't think that would happen. But we'll have to wait and see. Arsenal got a lot more business that they can and are looking to get done. And of all the players that we're linked with, I don't mind the Tielemans deal necessarily being put on the back burner for now. But Charles Watts of Goal confirming that information from last week, that the information was that the interest in Arsenal in getting that deal done has just slowed down ever so slightly. So we'll keep you updated, but it's not a deal we expect to be done anytime soon now. However, that could be different for Lisandro Martinez. Despite interest from Manchester United in the Ajax and Argentinian defender, Arsenal are still said to be leading the race for him and are the most keen on getting him done. He's said not to necessarily be a priority for Man United and therefore that leaves the door open slightly wider for the Gunners to get this deal done. He is certainly a priority for Mikel Arteta, who is a huge admirer and fan of the player. Ajax are willing to accept a figure over that of the £30 million that initially looked to be enough. We had a £25 million bid rejected. It now looks like that £30 million plus figure is what it will take to get Lisandro Martinez into the club. And I, for one, hope it is a deal that we definitely get done this summer, because he is certainly an exciting talent that shouldn't be overlooked. And his impact on the squad at left back, at left centre back, at possibly even defensive midfield might be something to be considerate of. And lastly, actually, penultimately, we've got one more story after this. You would have been thinking, lastly, what about Raphinha? But don't worry, we'll talk about him in a second. But Gabriel Jesus should be an Arsenal player this week. That is the latest information, that this week Arsenal should close the deal for the Brazilian striker. There was some late interest from Spurs. Hopefully that's not been too much a problem. And it seems in our daily Jesus updates that we may not have to do a daily Jesus update for much longer, as a deal for the Manchester City forward hopefully will conclude later this week. And lastly, our headline story of the day, we return where we started with Raphinha. Arsenal are said to be in the process of putting in an official offer. None has been made yet, but should be made very soon. Upwards of 50 million euros to try and confirm a deal for Raphinha, whilst Barcelona struggle to compete for the deal for the 25-year-old Leeds United player. They weren't willing to go over 30 million euros, which is what it would have taken for us to get him in if he would have been relegated with Leeds. But because he stayed up, that wasn't the case. And now Arsenal will have to pay significantly more. But because Leeds stayed up, it might be the reason that they end up gazumping Barcelona to get Raphinha into the team. There was a report from Spanish Goal that supposedly he could close a deal this week and that it was very close to happening. I'm not sure how legit that is. I don't want to sit here and say he will be a player by the end of the week. I don't get a feeling that would be the case. I think this might go on a little longer, at least, if Arsenal were to get it done, because, you know, an offer has not yet been made, but it is expected to be made very, very soon. So Raphinha, a very legit target of Arsenal and a real possibility this summer to be coming into the club. I, for one, hope this deal happens. And as I said at the start of the show, if you want to watch our tactical breakdown on Raphinha, that is up and available on the channel for you guys to go and watch. And that completes all of today's stories. I will be tackling a few of your questions before we wrap up the show. So if you've got any questions you'd like to throw into the chat box, now is the time to do so. And we'll go through as many of those as possible. There's already over 1,000 of you watching. Thank you so much. There's still so many of you are still watching, even though we had a delay in today's show because of StreamYard technical difficulties. Thank you so much for the continued support on the channel. Yesterday's show has nearly hit 20,000. It will be the first morning show to do that, I think, in quite some time. So thank you so much for the continued support on the 8 a.m/9 a.m. show today. But let's go into the chat box and let's answer as many of your questions as we can. Alrighty then, let's jump into the chat and see what you guys are saying. Gary says, Tom, do you think Arsenal will spend the reported 60 million on Raphinha, and would you be happy with spending half our reported budget on him? I don't think it is half our budget. I don't think that we have a £120 million budget this summer. I think if you look at the players we're being linked to, we've already spent £34 million on Fabio Vieira, £3 million on Marquinhos. Matt Turner's costing us about £5 million. You're then looking at Jesus at around 40 to 50 million, Raphinha at another 50 to 60 million, and Lisandro Martinez is a player that's wanted at around 30 million. So I don't think that 120 figure is anywhere close to what Arsenal are capable of spending this summer. But I do think, that we are capable of bringing in plenty of financial capital off the back of some sales. We've got the likes of Leno and Hector Bellerin and Pablo Mari and Maitland-Niles, Nicholas Pepe, Reece Nelson, and there are more, Lucas Torreira, that still need to be moved on this summer. So I think there is still scope for Arsenal to make plenty of money in the market, not just have to worry about how much they're spending. Uriel says, hi Tom, any news regarding the renewal of contracts, Saka, big and small, with Gabby? There was consideration of offering Gabriel Magalhaes a brand new contract. That could happen. There's been plenty of interest in the likes of PSG and Juventus, and that might be enough to force Arsenal's hand into offering him a new deal. It would be in part of that 2-year cycle that they have been kind of following. Saka is definitely a priority. The discussions continue to go on, and they're hopeful of getting a renewal of Saka's contract sorted as soon as feasibly possible. But I don't think that'll be an early situation that's solved, but hopefully it will be something that is indeed solved. Let's go to Peter, who says, why aren't we hearing many stories about fullbacks? Surely we learned from last season that they are vital to our success. I think because, Lisandro Martinez can play at left back. That versatility in his game gives Arsenal something as an option to kind of balance the back four if Tomiyasu or Tierney aren't available, and of course can compete with Gabriel as well. So Peter, we are. It's just I don't think, for instance, like the Hickey link that Robert was talking about there, I don't think that's high up in the priority list. It was only the information that came from Italy that said that Arsenal were very close to sorting that deal. The English side of things never, ever really corresponded with that. So I'm not surprised that we're not necessarily seeing that deal push forwards, maybe like we wanted to see it do. Avi says, do you think Mikel sees Vieira as our long-term number 8 and Xhaka replacement? I don't necessarily think so. It wasn't said that the Vieira deal would affect the Tielemans situation. I just think the Tielemans situation, unfortunately, has had some issues, which means that they're not willing to push ahead with that one this early in the window. But hopefully Arsenal can get Tielemans done. It just, I don't think, will happen early on. Xhaka is not going to be replaced. Xhaka is going to be at the club. There's going to be plenty of competition for places, but there's no indication now that Xhaka would leave. I'm not saying the door is completely shut, but it does not look like Xhaka will leave this summer at all. Lee says, we need a world-class midfielder to really compete, and if we aren't getting Yuri, who would you go and get? I always point towards Sergej Milinkovic-Savic as my world-class centre midfielder. If you can't get him because he's too expensive, then go for someone like Fabian Ruiz or Mikel Moreno. I think these are options that Arsenal could benefit from. But yeah, Sergej Milinkovic-Savic is, of course, the one that I think would be the better option for us. Christopher says, Tom, heard any more on Leno to Fulham or Maitland-Niles to Forest? No, those discussions seem to be ongoing. I'm not surprised. They're not deals that I would expect to quickly get done. Arsenal are going to be trying to get maximum value for those players, but there is continued discussion going on with those two targets. It might be that they just take a little bit longer to get done. I always said that I thought Arsenal's outs would go into the kind of the latter stages of the window. I think you'll probably see a couple of players leave on deadline day. I just think that Arsenal will be exploited in some manner to try and teams will wait until the end of the window to move for certain targets. Christian says, watch now that the Tielemans deal has cooled. Some Muppet journal from Italy will amplify a link with Arthur Melo. Look, I think that Arthur Melo has been on Arsenal's radar before. We know that. I don't know if Arsenal will push ahead with a deal for that. They were interested. I'm just not sure the club are completely sold on him. Otherwise, they would have pushed through a deal in January. Joe, thank you so much for becoming a member. Really appreciate the support on the channel. Make sure you give Joe a warm welcome in the chat box. Marcus says, if all of the players we seem likely to sign come in, who is going to go? I think obviously the players that we've mentioned, those surplus players, Nicolas Pepe, Pablo Mari, Maitland-Niles, Bernd Leno, Hector Bellerin. We're talking about all these players, but Arsenal are strengthening. We're not talking about replacing. We're talking about strengthening the team. It's not about one in, one out. It's about making sure you've got enough options for the rest of the season. That's the most important thing. Snipe Dog says, Tom, do you think the business is all done if we get the 4 targets we're going for? If Arsenal get Raphinha, Jesus, a Tielemans or alternative, and Lisandro Martinez, I think that's probably going to be it, on top of Vieira, Marquinhos, and Turner. Tell you what, that's a hell of a window. I asked for 2 forwards and a wide forward. We've renewed Nketiah's contract, which isn't ideal in terms of what I was wanting. But when you consider the other players, Jesus and Raphinha, that's the 3 forwards. Tielemans, maybe, or an alternative. Fabio Vieira, that's the 2 central midfielders. Versatile fullback, Lisandro Martinez. Goalkeeper, Matt Turner. Bonus youngster in Marquinhos. And Saliba coming back. As transfer windows go, you're going to struggle to get better for what I've asked for. The only way it could have really improved is if we'd have gone out and got kind of, a tall, unorthodox, contrasting striker like a Scamacca on top of that. That's the only thing I think that could have really taken it forward to the next step. But if we manage to do all of that, unreal. And I'm very, very happy with the way it's been. And I mean, I've said this. I mean, I've praised Arteta and Edu for the recruitment, the way in which they've turned things around. It's one of the reasons that my mind's changed on Arteta. It was the way in which we attacked the market. And that is so far potentially happening this summer. So I really hope that we can fulfill these ambitions that we've got to complete deals for the likes of Raphinha and Jesus and Lisandro Martinez and Tielemans or an alternative. It would be great. But they're not done yet. We're just being linked to them. We need to make sure that we get them done. Ingars, it's been a while since I've seen you in the chat box. Hi, Tom. Why do you think Arteta doesn't rate Saliba and not give him a chance to think he's better than White? He's coming back. How can you think he doesn't rate him? Surely you would be selling him if you didn't rate him. I don't get it. Don White says Pepe is not a bad player in my opinion. I think he doesn't fit Arteta's style. I'll agree. I think Pepe's got potential. There's always been a player in Pepe. It just doesn't work at Arsenal. He needed to get a better option elsewhere, and that's probably going to happen elsewhere as well. Jack says, "Hey Tom, have you seen the Matt Turner video? It's disgusting. I assume you're talking about the rejection of the the Spurs fans' autograph. I don't care. I don't care if it made them cry. That's a Spurs fan. I have no sympathy. I have no sympathy at all if you're going to wear a Spurs shirt. It's just, it's my biggest concern about my upcoming stag do that they're going to attempt to put a Spurs. I said there are so many things that I would do before I ever even considered putting a Spurs shirt. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Amira says, morning, Tom. Considering how often we go to a back three in games, do you think this is why the club has targeted centre-backs who can play full-back, or would you still prefer to sign pure full-backs? I think this is probably one of the reasons Tomiyasu and now Martinez, they're really good options for us, and they make the decisions to switch to different kind of formations so much easier. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Matt says, what's happening with Reece Nelson? I think he'll probably end up moving away from the club this summer. He's only got a year left on his deal. He did have a good loan spell. I just don't think that's likely at the moment. SKCD says, why is Osimhen expensive at 80? 80? Try 100. He's going to be significantly more expensive. You're looking at 40 million euros more than Raphinha. So if you're saying, would I rather get Jesus, Raphinha and Nketiah as a front three, or would I rather have Nketiah and Osimhen? Because it would just be that, because the combined price of Jesus and Raphinha is close to what Osimhen would cost. You're looking at upwards of 100 million is what Napoli want. So that's why it's a better deal, because it's just a joke how expensive Osimhen is. Nuna says, Tom, why are Arsenal fans moaning about signing Raphinha? I have no idea. Why can't we trust them after last summer's transfer window? They know what they're doing, don't you think? I think that, they've shown that they have a lot better positions. I think we have a lot more going for us this summer, and we have a lot more reason to be encouraged by what has happened in previous summers when it comes down to what we're trying to do. Raphinha, I mean, if you'd have said to me 2 years ago that in 2 years' time Arsenal would be signing, one of the most bright starting Premier League wingers in the division, I'd have said, nah, we don't do that. That's not Arsenal. Arsenal don't do that kind of thing. We go and find the cheap options from abroad. We go and get, rising stars. We go and get the cheap deal. So things have changed. And yet still, we're looking at a situation that is going to be tricky. SKCD says 100 million euros is around 80 million pounds. Yeah, but the Raphinha deal is 55 million euros. So it's still significantly different. Marcus says, what does Raphinha coming in mean for Saka? It's competition and they can both play together. Saka can play on the left, Raphinha can play on the right. We're building towards what is basically the Manchester City model of having so many attackers that you can just rotate, but doesn't necessarily change, So there you go. Vinny, I'm sure your stag do was hilarious. Tanaka says, is all this spending a sign that Arteta and Edu are on track with what the Kroenkes was targeting, even though they failed for the Champions League? Yeah, look, they said before that the target last season was to just, get into the Europa League. If we'd have finished in the Champions League, it would have been ahead of schedule, and we're acting as if we finished where we intended to. So I'm not surprised to see what we're doing. Zed says the anxiety is killing me right now. Is Jesus going to Spurs? Will Raphinha really come? Or are Leeds just trying to get more money out of Barca? Tielemans not wanting anymore. So many questions. Zed's only time will tell. But I think we have reason to be encouraged. Jesus looks to be something that will be getting done very soon. We should see the confirmation of Fabio Vieira in the next 24 hours, maybe less than that. Probably less than that. Graham says, do you think Arsenal could be a bit smarter in negotiating fees with clubs this summer, offering, potentially lower fees or an initial fee and then a bunch of add-ons? I think Arsenal have tried. Arsenal have really tried to improve what they do in terms of negotiations, in terms of sell-on clauses, in terms of buybacks, but I don't think they're going to do that. But loans with options, they've tried to increase the value of certain players. It's not always worked out. Let's wait and see what happens. Let's go to Junko says Craig Beattie, the Napoli boss. What? But Osimhen said Craig Beattie. Why does that name ring a bell? I don't know why. For Osimhen for 75 million from Lille, 80 million is evident. Wait and see. He will go to Chelsea, United, or Bayern, and will keep mourning the same old Arsenal with Suarez adding £1. Look, I don't think there's any reason to be annoyed that we didn't get Osimhen or we're not getting Osimhen. We're looking like we're going to be going and getting some really quality players this summer. Fingers crossed. Jack says, are we looking at any left wingers for competition, or are we sticking with Martinelli, Smith Rowe and Saka on the left? I think that we'll see rotation. I think that what we'll see is we'll see some different options. We'll see some players play maybe slightly out of position or a new position. I think Martinelli might get more time on the right, possibly. Raphinha, if he does come in, I think will play the majority of games on the right-hand side, but who knows? Let's indeed see what happens. Sojo Go So Slow says, why don't you just do your show at 9 a.m. so you know all the news the club might release for that day? Because 8s are easier and it's just become part of it. And I will be going back to 8 o'clock tomorrow. It's just, unfortunately, StreamYard wasn't working at 8. Manu says, finally caught a live show. Last exam today. Best of luck to your exams, Manu. I hope they go well and I hope you're smashing it. Oh, it was a reply to Craig Beattie in the chat. That's what it was. That's hilarious. I was so confused what was going on. Peter says, would you rather someone like Scamacca over Raphinha? Surely out and out number 9 is more important than a wide forward. I'd rather sign Raphinha than Scamacca. I would much rather sign. I think there's more guarantees. I think there's a better opportunity for Raphinha to come into the side and compete with Saka. I think Jesus can do a really good job for us in multiple positions. And, Eddie Nketiah is being overlooked massively. So massively. If a Premier League 22-year-old scored 5 goals in their last 8 games and then suddenly we were being linked to them and they were homegrown, the hype around a player like that would be so different. But because it's Eddie Nketiah, people are just overlooking that. I'm excited to see what happens next season with this team and what happens with these players. I'm looking forward to what happens. Kunal says, Tom, would any of our youngsters get a Premier League loan? Balogun, Lokonga. There's some whispers about. I saw a post this morning about potentially Burnley being interested, and then actually someone mentioned that to me, that possibly, of course, Vincent Kompany is at Burnley, so perhaps that deal could happen. Let's go to Vinny, who says, Tom, would you consider having a different color shirt every day we sign a player? Maybe a blue shirt if we sign someone like Marquinhos, but a Hawaiian shirt for Jesus. I suppose it's like the crazier the shirt for the crazier the level of signing. That's what it's got to be. Marquinhos, a low, small starlet, just block color. Someone as mad as Jesus, you got to go full mental. I tell you what, if we sign Raphinha, I'll wear a crazy shirt. I'll do that. I'll wear a crazy shirt if we sign Raphinha. That's a promise I will put in here now. I'll find a crazy. To be fair, the last time, I know Burnley are in the Championship, but of course Vincent Kompany is there. So let's see. I know Burnley aren't in the Prem. I was just saying because Vincent Kompany was there and he worked with Lokonga previously. So there you go. Let's go. Yeah, Tom's crazy shirt is just anything that isn't a black one, says Marcus, which is true. It's a little bit out there for me if I don't wear a black t-shirt. Alan says, Tom, do you think we will keep Balogun? I don't think so. I think Balogun will probably go on loan to a Premier League side. Or hopefully he will, or maybe an upper Championship team. We'll have to wait and see. I think he might get involved in pre-season though. So let's see how he integrates into the side. Anyway, we're going to wrap things up there. There's nearly 1,500 of you watching. Thank you so much for the continued support as always with the channel. You guys are amazing. Do drop a like, do leave a comment, all that good stuff. All the support is always appreciated. And I'll be back probably this afternoon, 6 o'clock, for a tactical breakdown on Lisandro Martinez. You can check out my chat with the Arsenal Lounge guys over there from last night as well, with Mo, Shaheen and Lev. Make sure you go and listen over there. Yeah, I'll be hopefully live in about half an hour on the Arsenal Way. So if you enjoyed this chat and you like a little bit this ugly mug that's on your screen, I'm going to be live in about 30 minutes now on the Arsenal Way. Link, as always, is in the description. TJ Mac, Tom, why so late? StreamYard messed up, so we had to push the show back an hour. That's why. So there you go. But thank you so much for tuning in, people. Do drop a like. Do subscribe if you're new. And as always, up the Arsenal. Back at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Don't forget.